to another episode of Gossip Finance, where I am your host, Alacius Inger.
And I'm Duncan Sandlin. How's everybody today? How are you doing, Lacey?
I'm absolutely fabulous, and I'm so excited to talk about the news. It's such a train wreck this week, I can't even stand it.
Cool. Everybody, just so you know, Lacey's got kind of a hard out here, so if we end up going longer, I might go a little bit longer, depending on if we can get through this. But we got a lot of stuff we need to cover. First, we got to cover, so the civil fraud trial wrapped up in New York, but Trump's going to court for a criminal case on the same fraud with Alvin Bragg. That starts next month, March 25th. We'll cover that. The RNC and Trump are hemorrhaging cash. They're practically broke for the election cycle, so that we'll cover that and where some of that money went. Everybody's favorite Matt Gaetz, his sex trafficking case has come back up, so that'll be interesting and fun in Congress. And we'll cover Trump's disqualification case, which is going to be heard by the Supreme Court here in the next couple days, actually. So if you're saying this, it's probably just been heard. And then we got, we'll cover some of the stuff on the economy that's going on, and we'll do some clips at the end. So are you ready to dive in, Lace? Are you ready to wade into the pool?
Rock and roll.
Into the cesspool that is America?
Into the cesspool we go. I'll take a shower as soon as we're out here.
All right, so let's begin with this. So Trump just wrapped up the civil case in New York. Now, the judge in that, Engoron, was going to issue a ruling, and the ruling had to deal with whether or not Trump could ever do business again in the state of New York, real estate business, and what the fines were going to be. And the DA initially asked for $250 million, and she asked for $370 million. Now everybody's guessing it's going to be close to $500 million because Trump's key defendant, his CFO, lied on the stand, and that just came out. And the judge just issued a letter about what did he perjure himself about to Trump's lawyers. And if they lie, that's going to get any worse. So he was supposed to do a ruling at the end of last month. It's now, a week late, which means that's bad because he probably already had it written and ready to go. But then this came out and the report came out from the independent inspector. Then she said that they were committing fraud. She said, I can't say it's fraud, but none of their books match up. Everything looks wrong. Right? And they've got all these weird practices that look fraudulent. So if it's dragged on this long, it means that Engoron's probably going to slap him even harder because he's had to change what the penalty is. And now he's trying to figure out, well, what's a reasonable penalty? But it's got to be worse than it was before if he's waiting this long. Otherwise, he'd have just issued it. So it could be up to $500 million that Trump owes, and he will never be able to do business in New York again, real estate business at least. Well, part of that whole case was it was a test run because they weren't sure if they could get the evidence in a conviction. Well, all the stuff he committed was actual crimes in New York. They're all felonies. Alvin Bragg had an indictment handed down by the New York Supreme Court, New York State Supreme Court, that he could charge him with 34 felony counts of fraud. One of them being the Stormy Daniels hush money payment. This is why this is so often referred to as the Stormy Daniels case, but it's so much more. That's just the fun part,
right.
Right,
that's the sexy part.
Yeah,
honestly, it's kind of the sideline part.
It's not even sexy. She described his penis as looking like the mushroom from Super Mario Brothers.
I didn't mean the human was sexy. I mean the headline.
The headline was sexy.
Headline.
Yeah.
Right.
The porn star, he made her watch Shark Week with him. It's weird shit. Okay, so anyway, that'll all come out. That'll be fun. But Alvin Bragg now moved forward because they know they're going to get him hammered for the civil. So now they've got more than enough evidence to hammer him for the criminal because all that came out in the civil trial and it's all admissible. So here's Alvin Bragg finally pulling the trigger, and he is feeling really good right now. He seems real calm and laid back, but he has got to be freaking ecstatic with the results here. Oh,
Listen in. On a New York Supreme Court indictment returned by a Manhattan grand jury on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. Under New York state law, it is a felony to falsify business records with intent to defraud and an intent to conceal another crime. That is exactly what this case is about. 34 false statements made to cover up other crimes. These are felony crimes in New York State, no matter who you are.
Now, I want to clarify this. I don't know what the penalties are in New York. I do know the universal language for that is if it's a felony, typically the minimum penalty is at least a year in prison. With the exception of, I think, like DUIs. But everything else, 1 year. So 34 counts. If they get them all consecutive time, it could be 34 years. This could be it. This could be the case that does it.
I can see the headlines now. Stormy Daniels' case results in 34 years of,
And I could
time behind
bars.
I know. That's funny.
I know. That would be like Abraham Lincoln getting taken down by, adult, cabaret model, breezy candles or something like that. You know what I mean? It's just too fucking good to be true. She'll go down in history as the porn star that brought down a president, an ex-president. But
you know what? There's got to be some like special porn star award for your ability to take down a whole president. Jeez.
I give her an award. We'll give her the little mushroom penis award.
You know what? I know we have absolutely no budget, but I might be willing to throw in and create a budget for Gossip Finance to give Stormy Daniels an award.
Yeah, we might buy her a little bobblehead of him. Something.
She'd be like, "Oh my God, that's what it looks like."
Oh man. So yeah, this looks really bad. Plus, this is going to get done before the election, right? So they're starting March. I doubt this goes past May, right? And it looks like the January 6th case is going to go through pretty soon. That was breaking news. We don't have time to cover it today, but the immunity case with Trump just got dumped by the appeals court, in unanimous decision, 3-0, said nope, he's not immune. So he can try to take that to the Supreme Court, but it looks like Chutkin's going to move forward with that case in May. So he's going to go from March. He's going to get convicted, and I'm going to show you why here in a minute on this one. So he could probably push sentencing back till maybe the end of the year or early next year at the longest, because he'll be in court right after that for the January 6th shit, and then he'll probably be in court right after that for Georgia for the election scandal shit. So it's going to be a rough year. And then what's the fourth? There's a fourth one I keep forgetting about. There's so many I can't keep track of them anymore. I should just get a freaking note card.
I mean, listen, I'm not going to lie. I've been so impressed with you managing to say these all without getting them mixed up as you present them, because there's so many of them. They've just started kind of tangling in my brain a little bit. Like, I know they're separate things.
Right.
But it's like one after another, and they kind of intertwine a little.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, at least some of them do.
Well, here's where Alvin Bragg is really confident. So part of it was the CFO for Trump perjured himself in the civil case, right? So now he's up for a perjury charge. All right, so we're going to go on to this, but this is now why Alan Weisselberg's so confident about this whole situation. All right, so this is CNN. Here you go.
The man who spent decades helping run Donald Trump's family business, Alan Weisselberg, could be on the verge of pleading guilty for the second time, this time to a perjury charge, we are told. The 76-year-old was the chief financial officer of the Trump organization for decades. He went to jail at Rikers for about 100 days last year. That was for his role in running a 15-year tax fraud scheme at the Trump organization. Now, tonight, there is new reporting from the New York Times and confirmed by CNN that Weisselberg is in talks to potentially plead guilty to a perjury charge, this time related to Trump's civil fraud trial, where he, Alan Weisselberg, would have to admit that he lied on the stand during his own testimony.
So here's what that means. Before we get into this long-winded segment. If he's in talks to plead guilty, it means he's cutting a deal. Because this is what happened.
Yeah, he's absolutely cutting a deal, because otherwise there's no reason you would admit to that.
Right. This
if you weren't getting some sort of a deal.
Well, I mean, you would when you get some sort of deal. But it's even doubly worse, because last year he did 100 days in jail on his last plea for being involved with the fraud stuff. And the kicker to that is that he got to keep a lot of the money. And the state of New York, the state of New York said, we're not going to seize it. Oh, was it New York? Or yeah, I think it was New York. Said, we're not going to seize it. You can keep it. So basically, he just had to do 100 days jail, pay a bunch of fines, but he got to kind of walk away with a little parachute. Not all of the money, but he got to keep millions of dollars, a lot of money. So in that deal, though, he can't then perjure himself later. So now they can rescind that deal. So he'd be doing whatever the minimum sentence is for that, which is probably at least a year, maybe more. On top of that, they'd be charging him with a perjury. But if they convicted him of that, then he'd be doing that time consecutive on top of that. And they would take all the money and freeze all those assets and seize them. So he'd be doing serious prison time, and they take all his money, his ill-gotten gains. So he has to plead now. I don't know why he was
he's kind of between a rock and a hard place.
Well, he put himself there. Why would you perjure yourself in court when you have a plea deal? I mean, do you really love Trump that much? Is he that much of a hot date? I mean, what's going on?
Yeah.
So Weisselberg is either going to testify on behalf of the prosecution, or probably more likely, they're just going to tell him, you're not testifying at all, or if you do testify, you have to be honest. So now Trump has lost his only witness for his defense. So Trump has no defense now to say he didn't know. So Alvin Bragg has got him dead to rights. So that'll be a fun case because Trump he's looking at the max here, man. It's going to be bad. It's kind of
some slaughtering waiting to happen.
Oh my God! So that's what's going on with that case. Well, that's going on. We talked about this last time. It looked like Trump might be broke after the E. Jean Carroll, the $83 million settlement, plus all the legal fees and stuff like that. Well, the RNC finally released their financial report for last year, for 2023. And it's bad. And we're going to cover a little bit of this. This is Ben Meisalas on the Midas Touch, but things are really bad for Trump and the RNC right now financially.
Does plan to try to use campaign funds or PAC money to try to pay some of the penalties in the New York defamation and fraud cases?
I don't understand.
So what she asked him was, are you going to use campaign funds to pay your fines or for the lawsuit from E. Jean Carroll and for other stuff, right? For all your legal shit. And he has sort of been using it, but that's what she asked him.
Are you thinking of potentially trying to use campaign money to pay some of those penalties that you might incur?
What penalties?
In the New York fraud case, the defamation case.
I didn't do anything wrong. I mean, that's been proven as far as I'm concerned. And actually, we won in the Court of Appeals. You probably saw that. That case has been largely won in the Court of Appeals. That was a political case coordinated with the White House by the Attorney General.
What is he smoking?
It's called denial.
And where is he getting it?
It's called denial, ladies and
I
gentlemen.
mean, did he just have a freaking stroke on stage or what? Like, God, I mean, you know what? For so much time, there's so much of his bullshit that he's managed to make at least sort of sound like it made sense. So if you weren't paying close attention to things, you could be like, oh, okay. But like, now it's just getting super weird. Like, you don't even really have to be paying that much attention to be like, what the hell is he talking about?
Right. Well, it's just bullshit. But it's gaslighting. He's just gaslighting his base. But he's just got tagged for $83.3 million. He's about to get tagged for probably another $500 million in fines, and he's going to lose his licenses. And his whole spiel at the end of the day is, oh, no, I'm innocent. Nothing happened. I was already found not guilty, which is bullshit. I mean, it's all fucking bullshit. But Ben Meisalas is going to get into this because this is where it gets really bad. But I just thought that was funny to open with. Denial is not just a river in Egypt, kids. It's also Donald Trump.
That he would potentially grift off of his donors to pay off the penalties against him, although he pretended not to know what these penalties were, these massive verdicts that are being entered against him, including the $83.3 million defamation verdict in the E. Jean Carroll case. I'm Ben Meiselas. This is the Midas Touch Network, and the financial reports for candidates, political action committees, have just been filed with the federal elections commissions for all of these PACs that are out there. And Donald Trump's financials, the Republican National Committee's financials are now released. They're now made public. And folks, they are absolutely disastrous. I mean, the RNC is in debt. They've had their worst fundraising adjusted for inflation since 1993.
So that's the way it starts. So last year,
and I love that picture of Joe Biden with that big smile on his face. That's
the one
actually
that-
pretty funny.
and that's Ronna McDaniel, who runs the RNC. So she's going to be famous for a couple things. One, worst fundraising year, adjusted for inflation, worst fundraising year in 30 years for the Republican National Committee. Worst one by far. On top of that fact, she's the one who we're not going to really do the debates. Trump wasn't required to be there. She did the whole thing about, well, Trump doesn't want to do a platform, so we have no policy platform, so we're running on nothing. They're not running on any platform. They have nothing published. So, I mean, if you ask your friends and they're like, I'm voting for Trump, you're like, well, what is it that you're voting? What policies do you like that he has? Anything they say is bullshit because he's running on nothing. I mean, she's fucked this whole thing up, and it's just a shit show. So there's that. So they haven't raised any money. Let's see if Ben gets into it a little bit worse, but they also paid out, here it is. Look at this. They paid out money to Trump's legal fees. The RNC did, and his campaign and his PACs did, and that was for last year. So we'll cover this real quick because this is where some of the money went.
It's actually higher, more like $60 million going to pay Donald Trump's legal bills. More on that in just a moment. Also, about $371,000 being paid to Melania Trump's stylist, who she refers to as an advisor of hers. $371,000 to Melania Trump. Purportedly, the wife of a billionaire is grifting off of donors to pay $371,000 to her stylist or a hairdresser. About $155,000 were paid to Waltine Nauta, Donald Trump's body man, who follows him around across the country, and of course, Donald Trump's co-defendant in the Mar-a-Lago document case, where Donald Trump willfully retained sensitive national defense information and refused to return it, and then lied that it was returned and then was caught with the documents. Let's just go through a bunch of these financials if we can. First, let's talk about the Republican National Committee's worst fundraising year, not just in over a decade, but really since 1993. The Republican National Committee, led by Ronna Romney McDaniel, has officially had its worst fundraising year since 2013, adjusted for inflation, though 1993. New filings with the Federal Elections Commission reveal that the RNC raised $87.2 million in 2023, spent $93.5 million, and ended the year with just $8 million cash on hand.
So they've got $8 million left going into a presidential election year. $8 million is not going to cover anything. $8 million's not even an ad spot, hardly.
No.
And that's the RNC. Now, Trump's PACs have also been giving him money, but now here's the problem. With the lawsuit and the fines, he can't pay that out of his campaign funds. He can pay legal fees if he states that there's a disclaimer in there that you're donating to me for legal fees. But what he can't do is use that to pay for court fines and fees. That would be another fraud if he tried to do that, which he might do. I mean, every answer he gives is the wrong answer. So it's kind of like, at this point, does it matter?
Like, Twinkie.
Twinkie, yeah.
No?
All right, Donald. The The question is, do you take money out of your campaign funds illegally to pay for your fines? The answer is no. What is yes? Let's do it. Is Michael Cohen still working for me? So 50
Man, no, his answer won't even make any sense. He won't even manage a yes or no. He'll just say something super weird and off the rail, man.
Oh, so at least 50 million, maybe more, in attorney fees for just last year. Now, this is funny to me for two reasons. One, they were like, 50 million, that's a lot. What are these attorneys charging him for? That's a lot. It is a lot of money for attorney fees. That's like a ridiculous amount. But part of it is like, I also know where some of that money went, because they're like, the fees would have to be really high for the attorneys. They'd have to be charging them like, $5,000 an hour or something ridiculous. And I'm like, well, yeah, but if I was working for Donald Trump, I would ask for something ridiculous too. First off, I wouldn't say yes in the first place. But if I were really desperate or I were just a person of low character, I'd still say, yeah, my normal fee is $500 an hour, but I'm going to charge you $5,000. And what's that extra $4,500 for? The annoyance tax. Because if I have to deal with your ass, I better be getting paid a lot of money. You better put my kids through college if I'm going to have to deal with your shit. I mean, that would be my attitude.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, the pain in the ass factor, and honestly, the risk to your reputation getting yourself associated with him at this point. I mean, I know the people that are his base are super into him, but we've already shown in previous episodes the actual numeric amount of human beings that isn't really a lot. So I wouldn't want my reputation being tied to all of his whatever. You know what I mean?
Exactly. On top of that fact, my second point is that was for last year. The only court case he really had last year was the fraud case, and that trickled into this year. So only the first half of it was last year. Well, this year he's got the second half of the fraud case, and he's got 3 criminal trials coming up and a bunch of other lawsuits coming up. So his legal fees this year are going to be $10 million a month, probably, maybe more. It's going to be a lot more than 50 million this year. So 50 million, that's just the opening number. That's the comedian that comes on before the comedian you paid to see. That's the clown at the circus. Right. That's not the trapeze act yet. We haven't even gotten there. So yeah, he is really screwed. So it's just bad. I mean, you should watch more of that in the Midas Touch. Look it up. Their financials are terrible. I mean, they've just been hemorrhaging cash. They've been $370-something thousand for Melania's hairstylist.
Okay, and the weird thing is I made a joke not that long ago, and it wasn't very nice of me, but I made a joke that over the years of their presidency, her hair started to look more and more like his hair.
Yeah, I know.
Which was super weird. And so, like, they're paying that much money for a stylist that made her hair start looking like his. Like, we were always making fun of his hair. How did hers get so bad?
I know.
Jeez, I mean, not that I'm on, team know anything about hair, but I know hers got worse looking. Yeah. That's what I know.
Well, I think she's just sort of keeping her head down. I don't think she cares what happens to him at this point. I think she's just keeping her head down and trying to take as much as she can. Take whatever's not nailed down. And we need to move on, though. So here's the one. Matt Gaetz, right? So Matt Gaetz got tagged a long time ago. Where 2 of his friends actually went to prison for this. Where he took a 17-year-old prostitute out of the country to have sex with her, which in the United States is sex trafficking. It's a felony. He kind of got off on it there. I don't know if there wasn't enough evidence or if it was because he was a congressman or what the deal was, but it kind of got dropped and pushed to the side. Well, the House Ethics Committee in Congress has been looking at it again, and Matt Gaetz is starting to sweat.
It's back.
Matt Gaetz, we have an award for you. My name is Michael. I'm with the Strongsville GOP. the 2023 Strongsville GOP Award. Thank you also. Congratulations for your dedication using Venmo to allegedly paying underage girls to have sex. Thank you all so much.
There was some guy pranking him. Here's
God.
here's your award for having sex with minors. All right, so this is the Midas touch again. This is a different lawyer, but he's going to go through this a little bit because part of what got, when Kevin McCarthy was the former speaker, when he got ousted, Matt Gaetz was the one who led that. It's now leaked that the reason he led that is because Kevin McCarthy had the ethics committee looking into this. And so Matt Gaetz had him ousted to try and cover this shit up. So this is all part of Gaetz's little CYA cover his own ass shit.
That was MAGA Congressman and Florida man Matt Gaetz getting trolled at a recent political event. But that's not his biggest problem. Now it's the House Ethics Committee that's doing an investigation and is closing in on the congressman. Let's discuss. I'm Dave Ehrenberg, state attorney for Palm Beach County, a.k.a. the Florida Lawman, here on the Midas Touch Network. I'm sure you remember that it was Matt Gaetz who led to the ouster of the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. Well, now it's come out in a Daily Beast article that Matt Gaetz had admitted to people that the reason why he took out McCarthy was not because he believed in fiscal responsibility and balanced budgets, was actually because McCarthy had allowed the House Ethics Committee to investigate Matt Gaetz.
So it's all just about covering his ass to keep his seat.
Oh, man.
Well, this is the guy that was showing naked photos of girls he dated to other congressmen on the floor.
Like, the hell are you doing? Like, you can't even wait till like a happy hour to do shit like that. Like, you're literally doing this. Oh my god. I mean, not that you should do that anyway, but like, seriously?
I mean, the only person who's hated more in Congress than him is Ted Cruz. And, you know, that's an easy bar to jump over. Everybody, even Ted Cruz probably hates Ted Cruz. But, I mean, he's got to. I mean, but, yeah, his only friend is Marjorie Taylor Greene. And they did a little podcast show together for a while. I mean, yeah.
And honestly, if that's your one friend, oh,
well,
geez.
And now he's going to be really scared because they just ousted George Santos. You know, the serial liar. He was the star volleyball player at Baruch College.
Oh, my goodness.
His mother was in the Holocaust and in 9/11, even though she was in South America the whole time. She can be in two places at once. She could astral project. I mean, but no, Matt Gaetz now fucking statutory rape and sex trafficking. And they've got,
oh my god,
they've got receipts of the Venmo he paid her through. I mean, he paid it to his friend, and then his friend paid her. It's like that's not how you launder money, Matt. I was gonna say you should have called me. I could have laundered it for you.
America, pay attention. You don't even have to be liberals like we are. But seriously, guys, come on. What happened to the good old days when y'all were just electing people that we didn't like because their platforms sucked? Well, now they're just like making total spectacles of themselves. Now it's just like reality TV. Seriously, the news is so much like reality TV that I feel like it could be its own thing. Like you could just cut and splice some of this crap together and make it look like its own sort of like Big Brother sort of something.
Oh, and 99% of the time it's the Republicans and the conservatives. It's just they don't have a party anymore. They're just all the crazies. They got all the shit people just conglommed onto that party. And the party doesn't stand for anything. It doesn't really do anything anymore. They don't push anything. They haven't passed any bills. They've had the least productive Congress, and now they've had the two least productive Congresses in history they've overseen. They can't keep a freaking speaker. I mean, dare I say this might be the end of the Republican Party. In which case, hey, let's get a Democratic Socialist Party or something. Let's get a leftist party in there finally. Because they call the Democrats leftists. The Democrats are fucking moderates. I'm a leftist. The Democrats are way right to where I am. It's that I keep using that analogy from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right? Whereas a leftist, we don't have a party, so we have to go with the Democrats. It's like when he tells his friend Cameron, your car's a piece of shit. He says, my car's not a piece of shit. He said, no, it is a piece of shit, but I don't even have a piece of shit. I have to worship yours. So that's basically how, half the Democrats think about the Democratic Party. We don't like you, but it's either you or the Republicans.
And you're at least closer. Yeah.
Right. It's not true love. You're just the better of the two options. So, man, but Matt Gaetz, we'll see what happens to him. But it is, I hope he goes to prison. I'm sorry. You had sex with you trafficked an underage girl for sex. I mean, you can't get any sleazier than that. But that was a little palate cleanser before we move on to round 2 of Trump. Because I don't want to cover him this much, but he's just so much shit's going on, and it's going to affect not just how the country functions, but the financial markets, what the market does. It's going to affect the economy. It's going to affect your taxes. I mean, so we need to pay attention to what happens to this election because it's going to be dramatic. Because if Trump wins, things are going to get bad. Your taxes are going to go up. We're going to be in a trade war with China, so inflation's going to spike again. Things are going to get bad. Corporate America is already panicking about Trump coming back into office and what that's going to mean. I mean,
it's not good.
Yeah, it's not
good for your wallet. And if you ever had any hope of actually retiring, you probably want inflation not to go insane. You want your taxes not to get higher because it's going to put the squeeze on every little thing even more. And if all of that stuff goes higher, all of your other expenses are going to go higher too. Landlords are going to have to jack up rents because they need to try to cover their whatever. So you're looking at literally everything costing you more and you not being able to put anything aside.
Right.
Assuming you even can right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll see how that goes. But here's the big Trump thing. So is the 14th Amendment, Section 3, is Trump eligible to run for president? Because under that 14th Amendment of the Constitution, Section 3, anybody who's engaged in insurrection or given aid and comfort to insurrectionists and has taken an oath of office can no longer hold office. So Trump has been found now by, 3 courts to have committed insurrection, 2 in Colorado and 1 somewhere else. So Colorado said, no, we're taking him off the ballot. He can't run for president because he's being part of an insurrection. And according to the Constitution, if you've done that, you're no longer eligible to run for president. Well, that's going to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's going to hear that case February 8th. So this Thursday, 2024, depending on when you're watching this video, right? That's when that case is coming up. So pay attention to that if you get a chance, or if you get a chance later, if you heard this, go look it up because you'll want to see what the arguments are. But this is a little taste of what the arguments are going to be. Now, we covered this a couple weeks ago, I think last week too, a little bit. And we were like, okay, we think the Supreme Court is probably going to find a way to weasel their way out of it and punt it. And they're either going to punt it to Congress or punt it back to the states. Now that I've seen the briefs from basically the prosecution side of this, the plaintiff side, it's versus what Trump put in, I don't know how the Supreme Court doesn't just rule that he can't run for president. They have really boxed them into a corner here. And so we're going to go over this a little bit, but here's MSNBC. I always forget this guy's name. But yeah, he's going to introduce this for us real quick.
The Supreme Court will hear the 14th Amendment case to bar Donald Trump from the primary ballot. Oral arguments are set for Thursday, with the justices weighing Colorado's decision to disqualify Trump from that state's Republican primary ballot for engaging in insurrection. Trump's attorneys have claimed the Supreme Court ruling to remove him from the ballot would, quote, unleash chaos and bedlam. More than a dozen other challenges to Trump's eligibility for office are now pending. Joining me now, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Harry Litman. He's a legal affairs columnist for the LA Times and host of the Talking Feds podcast. Harry, thank you very much for being here. In the short time that we have, there are 2 key questions around the 14th Amendment. Does it apply to presidents? and what counts as insurrection? So help us understand how the Supreme Court could answer either of those questions.
So look, the text fits. There's a lot of historical analysis, and they've had been a whole avalanche of briefs that really have driven home the officer argument doesn't really bear up very well. And insurrection, we saw it in front of our eyes. They have what they need to make the ruling, and there's nothing anti-democratic about saying insurrectionists need not apply, and it's in the Constitution. But it's a very vexing moment for the Supreme Court because you have to think they're going to be loath to authorize a sort of quilt work, different pattern in different states. Trump off in Colorado, on in Wyoming, etc. They are in a tight spot.
So he didn't really get into it in too much explanation there, but there's a number of questions that are going to come up. And we'll go through them. The first one is they were saying, well, in the wording, it doesn't specifically say the president. Okay. So that was one of the first issues that came up in this case. Right. So Trump's saying, well, it doesn't apply to the president. It applies to every other office, every other military.
So you couldn't be the mayor of Palermo, North Dakota if you were an insurrectionist.
No.
But they're going to maybe try to argue that you could be the president.
Right. So there are 2 points for that. So they did all these.
Well, that sounds ridiculous.
So they got all these amicus briefs from historians, legal scholars, and they got all these together. And these guys got together and wrote these really extensive amicus briefs. And I've read through some of them, but I made some notes here just to give you guys kind of what there was. So this first question: does the 14th apply to presidents? Both the amicus briefs that I read that mentioned this said, though it doesn't necessarily specifically say it word for word, right? This question came up in 1866 when they voted on this amendment, and the guy asked. It was here it is, Maryland Senator Reverdy Johnson, in 1866 asked why it didn't mention the offices of president and vice president. One of the other senators, Senator Lot Morrill of Maine, explained both offices were covered by the provision because it says no person shall hold any office under the United States if they took an oath to support the Constitution. Right? So you can't sit there and say, well, it applies to everybody but the president because it wasn't specifically mentioned, right? That's a stupid argument. You're arguing form over substance there. And they've already debated this, and Congress already agreed, no, it covers the president. So this is already in the record that everybody agrees it covers the president. And they agreed when they were passing it. So it's been clearly stated. All right. So you can't really use that argument. The other thing that was funny about this, another argument they mentioned was, so by that standard, the president's oath to office means less and is less binding than an 18-year-old kid who just joined the military and swore an oath to the Constitution. If that kid commits insurrection, he can no longer ever hold office again. But if the president does it, it's okay. So the president's held to a lower standard than everybody else in the government. That doesn't make any sense, right? It's the highest office.
Right. Highest office, lowest standard. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. That's what you give a king. You don't give that to a president. The president has a higher expectation. So that argument's not going to float. It's just not, because and that's not the only time it's been argued. It's been argued a bunch of times, and they've covered it. It covers everybody, any person. It's pretty clear. All right. So the second was the riot and insurrection on January 6th? Okay. Well. Here it is. The district courts in New Mexico, Colorado, and the Colorado Supreme Court already ruled that it was. And the January 6th committee report refers to that day's events as an insurrection 78 times. So yeah, it's already been determined that was an insurrection. Pretty unanimously, it's been determined. Right? So no, you can't say it wasn't an insurrection. The next question was this: did Trump actually participate in the insurrection? Well, the clause doesn't just apply to him physically being there. He didn't do that, but also to giving aid or comfort to insurrectionists. which January 6th committee found he did. And so did the court in Colorado found that he did, that he was guilty of incitement of insurrection. Plus, this was part of a much bigger plan. So there's intent in everything that they can show, right? So was he a part of it? Yeah. So we've covered it. Does it apply to presidents? Yes. Was it insurrection? Yes. Was he a part of it? Yes. So he's 3 for 3 on his motion to have this dismissed from Colorado. Should it be up to the voters? So this is the argument. We've gotten this from a bunch of commenters too. Should it be up to the voters whether Trump can be president again? Well, there's a couple things there. The 14th Amendment has qualifications. You have to be over 35. So if we as a society, got 100%, like Timmy, who's 5 years old, got 100% of the vote, still can't be president if he's 6 years old. Doesn't work that way. He could get all the electors and everything.
Right. So you still have to fit certain criteria before you get to go on the ballot to be voted on.
Absolutely.
So 5-year-old Timmy doesn't get to be on the ballot, even if we all think Timmy could do a much better job than anybody else. And arguably, a 5-year-old might do better than some of the people we've had. But we have to wait for another 30 years for Timmy.
For Timmy before he can run. Yep. So all that's going on. So there's that issue. The other part of it is also the voters kind of did vote Trump down. He lost by almost 9 million votes in the last election cycle. Right. But on top of that fact, there's another case that they're going to bring up that just happened here in Oregon, where I live. So in Oregon, we have a system with our state Congress, House and Senate, where we have to have a quorum. So 2/3 of them have to be there before you can vote on anything. Right. Well, about 1/3 of it is Republican, because all the rural towns have Republican congressmen and whatnot. Well, they don't like our tax bills, and they didn't like the environmental bills and the employee retirement system bills for public employees that were passed. So what they did was they just started walking out, and then they just not show up for months. So they blocked any legislation from getting passed because we don't have a quorum. So what happened is, I think it was 2019 or 2020, a bill came out, and it came out to the voters, and it was a Democratic vote by the people. And it was, okay, the bill said this: if anybody in Congress, in the state Congress, Oregon House or Senate, misses 10 days, consecutive days, right, without a good excuse, without like a medical reason or whatnot, then they can no longer run for office, any office in the state of Oregon. Ever again. They can finish out their term, but they can never run again.
Basically, it's to prevent them from holding everybody hostage.
Absolutely. So what ended up happening? That passed with like 75% of the vote. Of course it did, because everybody in Portland, in the metro area, which we are, most of the population of the state lives in just the Portland metro area. Like 3 million out of 4 million people here live in the Portland. We were all like, yeah, we want to get all this shit taken care of. And we can't because these 12 Republicans keep holding us back. Well, it passed. And yet these guys still did it. So now, of the 12 Republicans that are in the House and Senate, they make up a little over 1/3. 10 of them are no longer eligible to run. Because they, even after the bill was passed, they missed 10 days in a row. And then what happened is they're running, and they basically went to the governor and said, well, you can't do that. And the governor said, no, it was voted on by the people. It's law. I can't. My hands are tied. What do you want me to do? Overrule the will of the people so you guys can come in and obstruct legislation again?
So you can just make it so nobody can get anything done?
Right.
That doesn't make any sense.
Plus, our governor's a Democrat. So she's not going to sit there and go, oh, yeah, I'm going to help the Republicans, you guys, to obstruct legislation that I want to get passed so I cannot get elected next year. No. So then they took it to the Oregon State Supreme Court, who said, no, you can't run. It's passed. So now that whole argument at the Oregon State Supreme Court is going to be part of the Trump disqualification. See, Oregon did it. There's lots of precedent for it in the past. Malcolm X couldn't run for office because he was found to have committed insurrection. He was never charged or indicted with insurrection. I mean, this has been done many, many times. So should the voters have a right to do it? No. It's already been voted on and decided by our representatives. In fact, it's not just like it's a bill. It's an amendment of the Constitution.
Right.
It's the highest bar you can cross to get that passed. So no, it's already been decided. And then you can go into other stuff, Trump and due process, Trump's whole, I didn't swear to support the Constitution. It's like, well, preserve and protect covers support. Nobody's going to sit there and say, yeah, you have to use that specific word. So he made a good point, too, in the clip we just watched, which is if you take that back, so if you take it to the Supreme Court and they try to punt it back to Congress, it's like, well, that's a stupid argument because it's an amendment. Congress has already voted and decided on this. And this has been discussed and voted on, decided on. There's lots and lots of history that basically backs up that no, he's disqualified. We've used this many, many times in the last 160 years. Right? This has been brought up.
Right.
This is not a new issue. It's just new because it's never applied to a president before. That's the only difference here. But in every other case, it's no. The other thing is they say, well, if they make a ruling where they let the states handle it, well, now you're going to have this weird patchwork system where it doesn't make any sense on a federal election, which will be really fucked up. So they could do that, and that would be the best thing they could do for themselves to punt it, but they're going to look really fucking stupid because some of the states will have him on the ballot and some won't.
Right.
And then it'll be an issue of, well, if he wins, like let's say Oregon takes him off the ballot and New York takes him off the ballot where we live, right? If he wins, then we got to sit there and go, well, wait a second. He wasn't even eligible. We didn't get a vote. So do we have to recognize it? If he issues an executive order, he's not a legitimate president because from our standpoint, he wasn't elected. Couldn't even be on our ballot. So now now the Supreme Court's in a real bind because if they do that, it could be a fucking shit show, especially if he wins. Even if he loses, it's going to look bad. So I think the Supreme Court's kind of forced into a position now where they're going to have to say, now I don't know that they'll do this. I'm sure they'll try to find a way to wuss out of this if they can. John Roberts, I mean, if anything, his legacy is going to be he's a total right-wing pussy. That's how he's going down in history now. That's how every historian talks about him now. He's going to try and find a way out of it. But honestly, the only answer they can really give to this is, yeah, he's disqualified. That's the only legitimate answer you can give by any literal interpretation.
I don't think they'll do it.
Yeah. But it's the consensus of all the historians and all the legal scholars. Yeah, we'll see what they do. But it's good. That's why that's what I'm saying. Check it out, kids, because everybody's basically dying to see what happens Thursday with the opening arguments. It'll take them a few months to come to a decision, but the arguments will give you a sense of where they're going or what they're trying to do. But it looks bad. I don't know how they get through it. But yeah. So that's all we really had to cover for the news today, unless you wanted to add something else to that, but
no, I'm just going to put it out there. Let's hope we are replaying this in the future and saying, man, Alexius was wrong.
Yeah, let's hope.
I really, really want us to replay this for years and years to come because you guys are just going to love us for that long.
Yeah.
And say, wow, Alexius has a good track record, but she was really wrong on that one. But I'm going to stand by. I think they find some way to not have to make that decision, to not make the call that he can't run. I think they'll either essentially let him run or find some way to get out from under that in some way.
Yeah. And
I don't think they got the balls and integrity to do it, unfortunately. It's not as a group.
And I agree with Lacey. And then we had the discussion last time. We said they're going to try to find some way to either punt it off to Congress or punt it off to the states. They're not going to want to make a heavy ruling. But now that I'm looking at the arguments and you have unanimous consent and decision from all the historians and legal scholars, the people, the go-to people that the Supreme Court goes to for interpretations on these things. They are unanimously locked in that he has no case. He is disqualified under the 14th Amendment, not some side law that could be changed. An amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America. Just to give you guys a sense of what that is, you got to get an amendment. You got to get a 2/3 vote from the House and the Senate, I believe. 2/3. When's that going to happen? It doesn't happen that often. So you got to get 2/3, and you got to get like, God, what is it, like 30 something states, like 2/3 of the states to ratify it. So each state government. So it's not like it's easy to put a freaking amendment in the Constitution. It takes years. And it takes a lot of consensus. So this is not like it's some bill that was just passed in Congress that could be overturned by the next Congress. This is stamped in the Constitution. So I don't know how the Supreme Court gets around this, because the wording's pretty fucking clear. And the history and the precedent is pretty clear. So we'll see. I'm with Lacey. I think they're going to do whatever they can to try and punt it, but I don't know how they do it. That's kind of where I'm at. So hopefully we're wrong. Hopefully they do their jobs for a change. Anyway, let's take a quick break and then let's get to a couple clips and then we'll wrap up. All right, so let's get to some clips. You ready? So I want to talk. Let's do it. We've been blowing this off for a while. We want to talk about the economy, but Fox News this last week finally had to admit, for the first time in a year, the economy is actually doing good. So here's my personal favorite, a guy God, why is he still alive? Larry Kudlow. This guy's it's like Fox News. This is Fox Business. Okay. Fox Business is where you go when you can't cut it on Fox News. And Fox News is where you go. Fox News is where you go when you can't get a real job as a journalist. So
basically your journalism dreams go to die.
Right. And this is where, they're the scum of journalism. And this is the bacteria that leaches off the side of the scum. And that's what Larry Kudlow is. So here's Larry Kudlow finally admitting the economy's good after saying it was terrible for a year and we were going to go to a recession and it was going to be awful. He finally had to retract all that shit. It took him a year, but he finally did it. Here he is.
All right, let me talk a little bit about that. We had a blowout jobs report, more than twice the consensus expectation. Now, I know many of my conservative friends are trying to drill holes in this report. But you know what, folks? It is what it is. It's a very strong report. Not every economic stat should be viewed through a political lens. I've been in this business
Okay, he says that now. But wait.
A long time.
I was going to say, I was shocked for a second.
He views everything through a political lens, through his personal political lens. Ladies and gentlemen, let's just put it this way. If conservatives didn't push all the financial news through their own little bubble lens, we wouldn't be doing the show. The whole point of this show is we got sick of hearing that shit. And we're like, that's not what's actually going on. That's not what academics are talking about. That's not what financial journalists are talking about. This is just what shit you see on TV and YouTube, is them trying to push it through their little lens. And so we're saying, well, this is the liberal sort of view of it, and this is the actual facts. We're not just cherry picking shit like they do. So we'll keep going, but this is his mea culpa kind of speech, and he's already fucking it up.
Weigh the ballot box and just recognize the numbers. They are what they are. This was a very strong report. 353,000 gain in non-farm payrolls, a very big number. Prior 2 months, revised up by 126,000, another big number. And the bottom line here is more Americans are working. And
so I had to concede that, but I want to remember who this guy is, Larry Kudlow. Because Larry Kudlow...
Duncan, who is this old guy?
Larry Kudlow, let's see if I can find this. Where is it? Larry Kudlow, in all his big famous spiel was, Larry Kudlow was the guy that in March of 2020, when COVID first hit, It was really bad. And he went to the Republican National Convention, right, for Trump's reelection, and told everybody that COVID had gone away when it had just started. And it's still around. It's just not a pandemic anymore. It's endemic. It's like the flu. It's never going to go away at this point. But he said it was gone, that it was eradicated. I mean, it's just, the whole thing is just a fucking nightmare with this guy. He's just a fucking shit show. So let's get to, where was I? Oh, here we go. We'll go back a little bit here to Larry Kudlow. This was him. So he said COVID wasn't a big deal. He was also part of the vaccine denial people. I want to remember that. I want you to note that he was against. He publicly came out and said, "Well, the vaccines they're not that effective, and and they're not great, all this shit." He was also one of the anti-masks. He was a big Trumper. He was under Trump. He was in the cabinet under Trump. This was a congressional hearing he did after that. After he said COVID went away, and after denying the vaccines and all that shit, this was a congressional hearing where he talked about it, and they're going to ask him. This is on. Notice they're on Zoom because this is happening while the pandemic was still raging. Years after he said it was gone, and it was still raging. That's why they're on Zoom, and they're not in the Senate or the House together. But this is a hearing where they had him testify.
Mr. Kudlow? Okay.
Yes, I think I'm unmuted. Sorry, sir. Yes, I think the vaccines are safe and effective.
And I assume that you agree all Americans should get vaccinated, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
By the way, have you been vaccinated, sir?
I have. Blessedly, I've received 2 vaccinations.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
After he told people not to get vaccinated for years.
Oh, my God.
That's who we're talking about. So there's that issue with him. Let's go back here to... I want to go to this. So this is the Midas Touch, and they're going to talk a little bit about... So Fox News has had to retract, or especially Fox Business has had to retract this shit, because they've been telling us for over a year now, the Biden economy sucks. He's the worst president ever. Everything's in the toilet. We're going to a massive recession. Buy gold. Right? We've covered that. You know the person's lying to you if they're trying to sell you fucking precious metals. You know they're full of shit. They're a con artist. So they're going to cover this. Has been my solace again, but this is just... Fox News had to do a big backtrack because the numbers just don't agree.
One of the things that Fox said, well, no big surprise here. Well, take a look at the dominant numbers, though, by President Biden here. Here, play this clip.
Back now with a Fox News alert. A winner is in for the Democratic presidential primary. John Scott is in the newsroom to break down the results.
Hi, Molly. Yeah, we just got the numbers in, and perhaps to nobody's surprise, the sitting president, Joseph Biden, former senator from the state of Delaware and former vice president, wins the South Carolina primary. It is the primary that 4 years ago, well, his campaign was sort of moribund.
He didn't just win it, he fucking crushed it. 97.1%.
97.
I know.
Until he won South Carolina with the endorsement of Congressman Clyburn. This time he won again with 97% of the vote. Marianne Williamson comes in second with 1.7%, and Minnesota Congressman Dean Phillips with 1.3%. So a runaway victory for the sitting president tonight.
President Biden released a statement after this resounding victory. Let me read it for you right now. Here's what President Biden said. As I said 4 years ago, this campaign is for everyone who has been knocked down, counted out, and left behind. This is still true today, with more than 14 million new jobs and a record 24 straight months, 2 years of the unemployment rate under 4%, including a record low unemployment rate for Black Americans. We are leaving no one behind. In 2020, it was voters of South Carolina who proved the pundits wrong, breathed new life into our campaign, and set us on the path to winning the presidency. Now, in 2024, the people of South Carolina have spoken again, and I have no doubt that you have set us on the path to winning the presidency again and making Donald Trump a loser again. When I would
I love the fact that the word loser is in there because Trump loves to say that word and call everybody else a loser.
Well, Trump,
oh my goodness.
Worst midterm showing in 2022. All of Trump's candidates that he backed pretty much lost. He got crushed in the 2020 election. The entire Republican Party got crushed in the 2020 election. They got crushed in 2018.
You know what? Quite frankly, somebody who's a former president who is running in these primaries should be blowing away anybody who's running against them.
And Trump can only get 50% of the Republican vote.
Yeah, and you know what? We sort of did the math on that last time as well, which actually shows what a really horrible low number that is. But even without digging into that mathematics, you know, stop and think about it, people. A former president, everyone goes, yeah, it's no surprise Joe Biden blew away these other two people. Joe Biden's already the president. Once upon a time, Donald Trump was. He should be pulling that same sort of 97%.
Right.
As somebody who was in office already.
Well, and here's
already held that office. And the people like in his own party even are like 50-50 with whether they should bother to run him again. Like, that's not good numbers.
Well, and Trump, yeah, there's horrible numbers. Trump had horrible numbers when he left office. So Trump keeps mentioning, well, I don't want to be Herbert Hoover, right? Well, Herbert, and somebody had to have told him this. Well, Herbert Hoover is one of two presidents in the history of the United States that when left office with fewer jobs, with a negative job creation than when he started office. So people lost, the things got worse under him. And that's the whole economy even, but less jobs. Herbert Hoover is famous for that. He's one of two presidents. You know what the second one was? I'll give you 5 guesses and they're all Donald Trump. Donald Trump left office with fewer jobs, fewer people employed than when he started office. Created fewer jobs. So Biden's already running around calling him Donald Herbert Hoover Trump. Because why not? Out of all the presidents we've had, he's one of two of the biggest fucking losers. Consistently losing for the Republican Party. I mean, he's torn that party apart. But that's what's going on with that. I mean, so that's all bad. On top of that, I mean, we're going to go through a couple things with Ben here. We'll just skip ahead. So this is, where are we at? So this is Fox having to walk their shit back, finally.
Wing talking points that there's this invasion taking place. They all went and did this Take Our Border Back rally, but when they showed up, they didn't really see an invasion. You know, they were surprised that there was, where's the invasion? Let me play you this clip right here. This is from MSNBC. Let's play it.
I've been talking to these folks who have come from all over Texas, even other parts of the country, to be here. And some of them, even though we are about a half hour from Eagle Pass, have driven down to Eagle Pass to try to actually see what's happening at the border. And I've spoken to a number of people who said that they're a little surprised by what they're seeing here. I want to play a conversation with a woman, Misty. Take a listen.
It's pretty surreal. We actually made it into Eagle Pass and we went and saw Shelby Park. I was able to see some people actually trying to cross and stopped at the wire there. So it's very eye-opening.
And tell me more about eye-opening. Is it what you expected? Is it better? Is it worse?
It's not what I expected, but then again, I don't know what I expected. I can tell you it's not as bad as what I thought. So that's kind of eye-opening in itself too. Yeah.
Pull that back. So I'm sorry, that clip wasn't Fox News. That was they were covering the immigration thing. They're saying there's a big immigration problem. So all these people went down to Eagle Pass in Texas. And and it's a convoy of all the MAGA supporters, and they were out there, and they're going to stop the horrible migrants from crossing the border shit, right? And they got down there, and it's nothing. It's families asking for asylum. And then they get into the process, and they get a hearing, and maybe they get it, maybe they don't. That's just the process, right? And so they went down there to stop this invasion that Fox News has been and there's nothing. You imagine if you've been, for years, been told that there's this invasion, they're coming to war, it's like these big, strong men, they're coming to rape our women shit that Trump has been pushing. And then you get down there, and it's just fucking families and people looking for work.
You're like, wait a minute, there's nothing happening down here.
Right, so all that's going on.
You expect to see like some variation of like the old concept of like the Vikings raping and pillaging and whatever, like, you know, down at the border, you get down there and you're like,
right,
nope.
Yeah, this
nothing happening here.
Yeah, this is not the French invading England. This is not the samurai army invading South Korea. This is not the Mongols trying to invade China. This is poor people looking for work. I mean, so the other thing that was funny about that whole story was they interviewed a bunch of people that live at Eagle Pass, that they live there, they grew up there. Their whole thing is like, you know, we always had low crime rates. Things have been really good here. We never had a problem with the migrants. They don't commit crime. They don't cause problems. We never really cared. They just come up here and they work the farms or they work wherever, and sometimes they move other places. But we don't have a problem. So now crime has spiked, and then we have to hire more police, and everything's gotten worse. And it's not the migrants; it's all the fucking Trump people have come here, and now they're starting fights and shit and causing problems. And there's footage of the Trump people fighting with each other at Eagle Pass near the border, and it's like they all came down there to fight the evil migrants. There are no evil migrants, so I guess all they got left is each other. I'm just waiting for somebody to get shot. So that's all going good for Biden, right? And then we'll cover up the economy stuff is also going pretty good for Biden. So let's see right here. So here's Fox News finally. Sorry, guys. Sorry I missed that clip up. But here's Fox News finally going into it.
Your home at a low fixed rate mortgage, 3%, and the value of your home is going up. That is wealth accumulation. And you have a fixed rate mortgage. You have a fixed payment every month, and your wages are increasing. This in the monthly jobs report, 4.5% annual wage increases. Fixed monthly payment on your home, your wages are going up at 4.5%. That is extra spending money. That's how you benefit from inflation. And people are out spending. And the messaging from the RNC has been way off base.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, folks, a major win for President.
And that was Fox News saying that they are way off base. I mean, that shit just cracks me up that they can't even get their fucking ducks in line. So here we're going to go back to Fox News and Larry Kudlow because I want to make fun of him real quick. But the bottom line is for the first time, literally in about 20 years, wages are increasing and outpacing inflation. That has not happened in our adult lifetimes.
No, they've been basically at a total standstill like since we got out of college.
Right. We've been in recessions after recession, the Great Recession, pandemic. You tried building a career and a life in that fucking environment for 20 years. 2 of the longest wars in America's history simultaneously. Massive debt spending, but what do? They cut social programs, making it harder for people to live. And that was all the Republicans. That was all the conservatives. So when people are like, why? Well, not all Republicans are bad. Yeah, they are. Yeah, all of them are. You either a part of that shit or you support it. You either are voting for Trump, who's a rapist and a racist and has racist policies, like almost all the Republicans do, or you're part of that team. There's a certain point where you're at a party and you look around and go, man, everybody at this party is an asshole. But there's a certain point where you got to sit there and go, wait a minute, I'm at this party.
Wow, I hate everybody here.
This is sort of where the Fox people.
Why am I here?
This is when sort of the Fox people are starting to realize it. Oh shit, we're at this party. I don't know that they're going to do anything because they get paid a lot to be at that party, but here's Marie Bartiromo, and they're going to cut to Larry Kudlow, I think, here.
Are just about getting these numbers shortly. We're waiting on the jobs numbers where we're expecting 180,000 jobs created in the month of January, and the unemployment rate to tick higher to 3.8%. We are watching the revisions, of course, and we're also looking at production. You got the numbers?
Wow.
All right, let's get right to Cheryl.
And this is something, 353,000.
Report, jobs of 24 is out, and it is whopper 353,000. 353,000.
I mean, my mea culpa, I was wrong about the slowdown in the recession. So was the entire
I don't think you were wrong.
forecasting.
He was wrong.
Well, the Fed, everyone was wrong.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is what it looks like when...
I love it. Yep. But he was wrong. So let's see if I can find this clip from him. Yeah, here it is. So here's Larry having to suck it up. This is also by his touch. I forget this guy's name, but we're going to just get to Larry here.
admitted he was wrong.
Now, I'd say Mr. Biden inherited a boom and turned it into a bust. That's Bidenomics. So almost surely the economy is headed for a significant slump. Now, it suffered inflationary recession in the first half of 2022, may be headed for a deflationary recession next year, 2024.
12 seconds later.
Look, it was a good quarter. Don't get me wrong. 3.3% beat estimates. And the last quarter was a good quarter, 4.9%. Absolutely. So he gets his due. If I were he, I'd be out slinging that hash too. No problem. To speak for a second on President Joe Biden selling Bidenomics in Wisconsin today. Now, yes, I'm an honest broker. He got a good 3.3% GDP number.
He's not an honest broker. He's a fucking liar. What's this?
For the fourth quarter, following a good 4.9% in the third quarter.
Okay. It's been 24 months of this. 24 months. That's what an honest broker would tell you.
Okay. If I were he, I would be bragging about it too. And inflation has come down. I mean, my mea culpa, I was wrong about the slowdown in the recession. So was the entire...
I don't think you were wrong.
Forecasting.
Yeah, he was wrong.
Well, the Fed, everyone's wrong. Okay.
I would say better late than never, but the damage...
So, I mean, it's just all bullshit from him. And then the other thing he does, and this has been his big trick now, is he's been talking about, well, look, here's the deal. Yeah, things are really good under Biden, and the economy's going real great. But we've had some slowdown with, some of the market stuff, and there's been some problems with, like real wage, real income. What's it referred to as?
Living wage?
No, it's not living wage. It's the hang on. Here it is. The U.S. average weekly earnings rate. So he'll pull up this on his show all the time. So let's look at see if we can view the full chart. Although that didn't really help, did it? So let's go back. So let's see. So you can sort of see this chart, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So let's do 5 years. Okay. So Biden becomes president in 2021, right? This is the 2020 election. So this is Trump. So it was up, and then COVID, kind of brought it down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then under Biden, it's gone down quite a bit. So it was at 398. Now this is the real average weekly earnings, right, in America. And he'll say, if it's doing so well, how come real average weekly earnings are down, right? And you'd sit there and go, oh, that's an interesting point, Larry. Except for if you're somebody who works in finance, you'd be like, well, we know why it's down. It's because of this little thing called inflation. So here's the inflation under Trump. Here's when Biden became president. Inflation wasn't so bad, but then when Biden got us out of the pandemic, what was the side effect of that? People went out and started shopping, and then corporations realized, hey, we can gouge the prices. So inflation got up to like 9% at the peak. And now it's finally starting to come back down. So if you look at this chart, how it's stretched inflation, and then we go back to the previous chart, you notice a little trend here? They look kind of similar, don't they? Wages went up until inflation went up, and then they went down. And now that inflation's going down, wages have started to come back up. Right? It just takes longer.
Because they have a relationship.
Right. So the whole thing is you got to watch this because it's all bullshit. But here's the catch that he never pulls out. And he doesn't ever talk about this, but this is it. This is what wages have done since Biden's been president. This is hourly earnings.
Oh, wow. Up, up, up.
Up, up, up. They've been really good going forward. But you notice here, it's been fairly flat compared to inflation. And then it spiked here after the pandemic, went down a little bit, and now it's starting to curve up a little bit more. This line, I know it's hard to see, but this line actually curves sharper after the pandemic. It doesn't look like much on this chart, but it is actually improved quite a bit. So that's the whole thing with that, with the Biden thing. Probably one more clip. So this is, for those of you who watch financial news, this is what everybody was, so on Fox News, they were like, well, I guess it's not a recession. That's
a great piece he's got going there.
Yeah. These are actual finance.
Oh, man. I love that.
Well, this is an actual finance person on Yahoo Finance. This is what everybody else was talking about in the actual financial world.
And investors, they're sifting through a number of reports today with the latest reading on second quarter GDP showing a slowing growth in key areas across the U.S. economy. The print was revised lower to 2.1% on the heels of declining business investment. And U.S. job growth also pulling back in August. Private employers adding 177,000 jobs, less than half of what was added in July. All of this ahead of tomorrow's PCE report, the Fed's preferred inflation gauge. Now, despite the sluggish readings that we did get on the economy, stocks, though, like Kiko was saying, are up.
This is a little bit older, just so you guys know. There was a little sluggish point there in quarter 2 of last year. But
so it's bad news, actually good news for the market. We want to bring in Tom Hayes, Great Hill Capital Chairman and Managing Member. Tom, it's good to see you. So certainly we've heard Fed Chair Jay Powell, the Fed, waiting for the economy, waiting for some of these data points to weaken just a little bit because we know what that means for Fed policy. It seems like investors are a little bit encouraged by the disappointing reports.
Yeah, I think we finally have a Goldilocks scenario where the slowing is starting to kick in, the lagged effect is starting to kick in, and more than anything, what that means for the Fed is it gives them cover to actually pause in September, which is kind of priced into the markets right now. And then we have till November, which everyone thinks there's going to be a hike in November, but we're going to get a lot of inflation data between now and then. We're going to get a few jobs reports between now and then. And looking at the ADP data today, we're going to see the jobs report on Friday. If those numbers continue to come in a little bit softer, the Fed may be done in terms of hiking, not done with tightening because they'll keep rates elevated for a little while. And that creates this perfect scenario for stocks.
So what he's talking about is this, and this is where it's kind of been at right now lately, is what we call the Goldilocks scenario in finance, which really comes down to this. Right now, we have sustained growth, wages are going up, jobs are going up, but it's not so hot that inflation's going up. Inflation's coming down. And inflation's actually getting towards, I mean, it's reasonable now, but it's going to be more reasonable going forward. And the Fed's keeping rates where they are. We've seen this scenario before, and I'd be interested to see it play out in the future. Because actually, this isn't my idea. It's actually a professor of mine posted this on his social media stuff. And I thought this was interesting because he made a good argument here, which is back in 1993, we had Fed rates of about 5.3%. I think it was something like that, 5.8, whatever it was, somewhere in there. It was above 5. And they stayed that way through the rest of the 90s. But the 90s was one of the biggest growth decades in the history of this country.
Mm-hmm.
That's when my parents started to make a shit ton of money, because the economy was booming and it became really easy to make a lot of money. And part of it too was the internet and the invention of that. But we're in a scenario now where we've got these high rates again, but the economy is in a Goldilocks scenario where it's hot, but it's not too hot that it's causing high inflation, which is kind of what was happening in the early 90s. Now, at the same time, you could argue, well, yeah, but that was the internet. That was the dot-com boom that also fitted. Well, what's the big thing going on now? Artificial intelligence, which is going to revolutionize how we do a lot of things. So that could be a whole new boom. So this could be, I'm not saying it is, but I'm optimistic here. It could be that we're looking at another 5 or 6 or 7 years or whatever it is of an economy that's hot, but not so hot that it heats up inflation. And you can see even more job growth and a change in the types of jobs to more lucrative kinds of jobs, which is what happened during the dot-com era. Then what you need to do, boys and girls, is not elect another Donald Trump or George Bush to blow the full fucking thing up like happened in 2000. So that's the only thing, because everything was good, and then Bush came president, we were at war, and everything was on fire. And then we were in recession after recession after recession. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like, in my lifetime, every recession has been under a Republican president. Every bad market rout for several years has been under a Republican president. Every slow jobs growth or negative jobs growth now with Trump has been a Republican president. None of this shit happens under Democratic presidencies. So that's just my argument for the end of all that. But we probably don't have time for this clip today. We'll do it next time. For those of us, check us out on Patreon. I'm going to put in some videos this week. I'm going to cover debt and paying off debt versus saving, and how to do the math on that so you can calculate it. And then I'm also going to talk about how to plan out credit debt, and then I'll talk some about the economy and do some stuff on that. And then I might do some like fun stuff if the Supreme Court stuff comes in. I'll do a clip on that. If Lacey has time, she might join me. So we'll see. We'll see kind of how it happens. It's going to depend on our schedules and what reports out.
Because we have jobs and
stuff. Yeah. So So check out our Patreon page. There'll be some videos coming up later this week. So you can check us out at our Patreon page, which I'll link below here. Lacey, where can everybody find you?
As always, you can find me at mysensewithsense.com. You can find information about articles, workshops, courses that I run. You can shoot us any questions about that, or send us some clips. We love them, or topic requests, or invite yourself on the show if you email us. And where's that, Duncan?
Yeah, you can email us at gossipfinancead.com. Also, if you have financial questions or personal finance questions, definitely send those to us. We can't give you advice, but we can at least give you what your options are and point you in the right direction. So please send us that. Once again, any questions, concerns, issues, if you want to come on the show, we'd love to have guests. We've tried getting people before, but everybody always kind of weasels out. So I don't know. We'd be nice. We're not going to yell at them or anything. I might, but Lacey probably won't. Unless you tell her.
I won't yell at you.
Unless you're an anti-women's rights person, and then Lacey might yell at you.
And then I'll yell at you.
Anyway, please like.
Just so we're clear.
Yeah. Well, please like and subscribe, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you guys next time.